Hey, and welcome to our show about comics.
Yes, it's a wonderful show where we're going to talk about comics. I'm Mike.
And I'm Vincent. We're not really sure what the show is called.
I still really like Comics the show.
I like changing it every week.
Yeah.
Um, so got some quick news to run through. There's a new Avengers Endgame trailer. It's about all there is to say about it.
Yeah, it's the third one at this point.
James Gunn rehired by Disney for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. That's the big movie news. And pretty interesting.
I mean, interesting, yeah, but I mean, I'm surprised. I'd like to say I'm surprised, but I did feel kind of like there was the chance he was just going to come back once everything cooled off anyway.
I think it's just it's still surprising to me, even if they were totally wrong and everyone was against them. It's surprising to me that Disney would reverse a decision like this. But I guess ultimately, to a lot of people, I mean, it makes them look good, even if it's very delayed and everything like that. So it's whatever.
I think what they saw is they're like, wow, he's going to make that really, really bad Suicide Squad 2 movie. We should probably save him from that.
Yeah. Guardians 3, probably going to be a decent movie.
Well, I guess this, if we want to get into hot takes real quick, I don't think James Gunn's all that great of a director, really. So, I mean, yay, he's back, but Guardians 2 is, I don't think that great.
Yeah.
And I don't really love any of his other movies. I like Super, and I'm like all right on Slither, but like, I think his brother Sean's the more talented one. But
To me, it's just how it's fun. The Guardians movies are fun.
yeah,
But cool news. On the comic side of things, C2E2 is happening right now. Or no, it's not. Emerald
Emerald
City
City.
Comic Con.
Just say Emerald City is happening.
Yeah, Emerald City Comic Con is happening. C2E2 is next weekend, I believe, or maybe the next one. Who even knows? There's too many
So
cons.
we're right into con season then.
Yes. And a few news leaking out, and this is also out conveniently basically the exact time frame this week and next week where all the publishers are going to be putting out their solicitations and everything. So from Marvel, there is a Silver Surfer book called Silver Surfer Black, I believe, from Donny Cates and Trad Moore. Should be cool. Obviously, Donny Cates has kind of carved out a cosmic corner with Thanos, Cosmic Ghost Rider, Guardians of the Galaxy, and this is sort of spinning out of that because of whatever
Technically, you can throw Venom in there too.
he is sort of. And Trad Moore has really fucking awesome art. He did the indie book Luther Strode, and then he launched Robbie Ray as Ghost Rider, and then ditched it pretty quickly. But he has really cool art. I'm not really sure if I would have put him on Silver Surfer. That would not have been like my first pick, but it should be cool. As usual, all the announcements from Marvel and everyone who covered it, not remotely clear whether this is a miniseries or an ongoing. I have to assume it's a miniseries based on the fact that it has a subtitle.
Yeah.
Which understandable. I mean, he already has 2 ongoing series with Venom and Guardians. And is used, to my knowledge, is still occasionally juggling certain indie stuff. Like I know he had an Aftershock book called Baby Teeth somewhat recently. But hopefully a good book. Then from Dark Horse, Matt Wagner is bringing Grendel back for I think it's either 8 or 12 issues or so. And so that is very interesting.
Well, he brought back Mage, and now he's bringing back Grendel.
Yeah, he finished Mage. I've never really read much Grendel. I have like the very first book and the last book, and eventually I'll read it all.
My only thing about Grendel is, to me, he always looked like Black Suit Spider-Man as a kid. I was like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, it's not Black Suit Spider-Man.
And from Marvel, at least so far, not as huge new. Well, actually, I already said Silver Surfer. But they're also doing these one shots to celebrate the anniversary. They already did one shot celebrating the anniversary, and it was based on like the obscure genres that they don't publish anymore. But now they're going to do them with actual characters that people care about. So Wolverine has a one shot, and prominent Wolverine creators Chris Claremont, Larry Hama, Sam Keith are all going to be involved in that issue. And then there's a Hulk one shot, which will involve Peter David and Dale Kuhn. And so expect more, probably one or two more of those for Marvel's June solicits, and then maybe in the months to follow. So that's our news roundup. If we missed the news, it's not important. It's not news. It's fake news. Now, last week, we accidentally skipped doing our retro book, or whatever the hell we want to describe this as.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, though, there were like a lot of books last week.
Yeah. So we're catching up, and we're talking about Captain America 170 from February 1974. What did you think of this issue?
I was dropped right into the middle of a story, so I didn't fully know what was going on. Dialogue's pretty dated, I'll say that.
Some of it, for sure.
Some of it, for sure. But art was pretty good. I didn't know Moonstone was a guy, so that was...
I don't think he's not a big guy. This is a minor character.
Yeah.
So this issue, Steve Englehart plot, Mike Friedrich script, and Sal Buscema art. Cap is accused of murder, and because there's an ad executive who's running a campaign against him, but maybe he's a villain, and so Cap runs away from the cops, and is then taken down by this Moonstone guy who's overpowered as fuck. He has like 10 powers and just destroys Cap.
Yep. Horrible costume, by the way. Terrible costume.
Yeah. Also, I think it was colored differently inside than from the cover. It's like a slightly different hue.
It is. It's completely different. On the outside of the cover, he's purple and orange, and inside the book, he's blue and purple.
Yeah. The other half of the plot, because technically also this is not Captain America 170, this is Captain America and the Falcon 170. And so Falcon is over in Wakanda visiting the Black Panther and he just takes along his girlfriend for some reason. And very interesting, footnote from Roy Thomas says that this story arc takes place before Black Panther's New Adventures in Jungle Action, which would have launched around this time by Don McGregor. And Sam's whole reason to go to Wakanda is that he kind of has an inferiority complex. And so he wants to get some powers or some leg up so that he can more properly compete side to side with Cap. And the Harlem style scripting from Falcon and especially his girlfriend
has not aged well.
And we get Moonstone's origin. He's a crook who stole a rock, and the rock is from the Watcher's blue area of the moon, and somehow that gives him 1 billion powers. Falcon's girlfriend, because she's bored out of her mind, the Wakandans are just like, hey, we'll take you to Lagos on a expense-paid shopping trip or whatever, across the continent practically. And her bodyguard who's with her gets killed, and she's kidnapped by just this random Harlem thug who just happens to be in Wakanda. And this thug has a history with Sam Wilson going back to Cap 134.
Yeah.
And then this issue, we actually ended up reading the key issue because this is the issue where Falcon finally gets his wings over 50 issues after his introduction.
That I didn't know. Like, I thought he had them. Like, I know he had like the green costume first, but
he switches out of the green into the red pretty quickly, but he didn't have wings or anything. He did have a red wing though. And so the bros, Sam Wilson and T'Challa, now with uh, better equipment, they go to save her, and that'll happen in subsequent issues. Meanwhile, back to Cap, he gets broken out of prison by random people, and there's this like awkward line from him where he's like, "This is the polarization of society," and but also right before he gets broken out, there's this really awkward scene for like half a page where this guard basically like checks in on him and is trying to be supportive, and Cap kind of brushes him off and like bums out the guard.
Yeah,
It's very strange.
it was very weird.
And after this, I think it's like kind of subplot that's running along, but the bulk of Secret Empire, that arc, which eventually leads to the one of the man behind it all, or I forget what dumb name they give him, but the president, Richard Nixon, shooting himself in the Oval Office. I think the Secret Empire arc concludes around like 176 or so.
And this we should state that this was by Mike Friedrich and Sal Buscema.
Yeah, Englehart plot. I really liked it. It was, I mean, the Moonstone plot, not the greatest.
Was not very strong.
Honestly, the Falcon and Black Panther half of the issue was way more interesting.
Yeah.
Though the dialogue was really cringy. So that was Cap 170. Now, we did the RNG off the air, and so next week we are reading a book from February 1998 and published by Marvel, and it's going to be Spectacular Spider-Man 254, which is going to be one part of the Spider Hunt crossover. And it's late 90s Spider-Man, but we do not read it on our Spider-Man podcast.
I hate that we have to go back to 90s Spider-Man, but
it's new to us. It should be interesting.
Next week's going to be very odd in terms of content we're doing, because we'll have the end of the Clone Conspiracy next week. And then this, but then also next week is Spider-Man Life Story that I know we're reading, and then I guess we'll figure out if one of us, maybe both of us, are going to read Friendly Neighborhood, but I have not been reading Friendly Neighborhood, so I could catch up on it. But we'll see. But heading to DC, this is the only DC book I read this week, was Wonder Twins #2.
Yep, same. Here, I'll grab this one because then you have a lot of indie shit to talk about.
Yeah, I've got my two indie books.
So Wonder Twins 2, this starts with the Scrambler escaping a prison call center hybrid owned by Lex Luthor.
Yeah, it was great.
And the Wonder Twins go on a field trip to it because they don't have funding to go on exciting field trips. And then up until this point, it's just like, okay, everything's funny, it's dumb, so it's just slightly political. But then Jaina starts getting real political, and one of the like guards or administrators says that 9 out of 10 inmates who receive vocational training, such as this call center thing, don't reoffend. And so Jaina says, so you're saying 90% of people shouldn't be here in the prison in the first place. But that doesn't make any fucking sense.
No.
Because obviously, you know, that you're going to have murderers in there, you're going to have rapists, et cetera, et cetera. It's not all going to be shoplifters.
Right.
And I feel like most murderers as well probably only do it once. I'm not sure how many murderers reoffend. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't punish, give them justice for murdering someone. I don't know. That kind of distracted me for a bit. And then I'm pulled back in with what I expected from this book, with Beast Boy filming a fruit pies commercial.
Well, here's the thing. Originally I was the only one that was going to read Wonder Twins this week, and then I read it, and then I immediately like texted you, was like, no, you have to read Wonder Twins. This was one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
It was because Beast Boy was actually doing his job.
Yeah, it's for like a half second, for like the first two panels, you're like, wait, is this a straight scene? And this is just a really like laughable use of Beast Boy. And then it's this, what it actually is. And it's basically, like a reference to the old like Hostess ads within the comics, but that were drawn
Yeah.
as comics, and that was an amazing scene. It was like it's almost something where, and he did do basically the same thing with Flex Mentallo, but like Grant Morrison could have done this scene, and it would have been totally different, but also equally as awesome. And it was really cool here. And then there's weird stuff about how Beast Boy, he used to transform into animals in his sleep, but he takes pills to control that now.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, like maybe there's like commentary there, but I'm not really sure what the point, like what it's actually trying to say. And then Scram,
Yeah, but Beast Boy is going to be like the liaison to Gina.
yeah, but even then, like, is he actually going to be in subsequent issues? I'm not sure.
I don't know because this one it says on the cover of this one guest starring Beast Boy.
Yeah. Scrambler calls up Lex Luthor, whose prison he was in, to try and join the Legion of Doom, but they don't want him. Slash, they don't have spots, so he joins the League of Annoyance.
Yeah.
With all these dumb characters, I didn't really feel like taking the time to look up and see how many of these characters were real. I'm assuming there's a good chance some of them are.
Yeah.
But the highlight here is Druncula.
Well, that's not his name, Vince.
Yeah, it's like Baron, whatever, but it's Druncula.
Baron Nightblood.
He is a vampire. He's literally just a vampire villain. But as may actually happen with vampires, if he sucks the blood of someone who's taken alcohol, then he gets drunk, and so he is an alcoholic by way of
alcoholic vampire.
It's kind of genius.
It's amazing.
And so the League of Annoyance tells him to go mess around with stuff, and he's like, I don't want to do that.
He's 30 days sober, Vince.
But he goes along with it, and then the twins bust him up, primarily with 2 nut shots. Like the actual action scenes, it's just them punch him in the nuts. And so they beat this guy. They beat this shitty villain up, take him to jail. But the jail is full because there's a big hockey game tonight.
Yeah,
it's hilarious. And so they take him to the private Lex Luthor prison call center,
and they put him in the drunk.
Yeah, he gets in the drunk tank, so he's no longer sober.
And then they came to the next day, and he was like, "I never wanted any of this. I was 30 days sober."
And the setup for going forward is that Gleek is finally here. The stupid. In my opinion, it's still solid. I had a lot of fun with this, but it's, as I said, it's political, and I don't really remember the first one had commentary, but the first one didn't.
The first one was not as political as this one was.
Yeah, like way less political. And I'm not against that. I'm fine with it, but it's just not what I expected. I thought this was going to be like the off to the side thing where it's like, all right, Mark Russell, be funny as you are, but don't go too political on this one, especially since also last issue we kind of thought maybe this was sort of all ages.
Yeah, no more of that. I do like Mark Russell, genius for making me feel sorry about Druncula at the end of this book.
Yeah. He's pretty great.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I think I'm going to stick with this. I know the first issue I wasn't the first issue I wasn't like I liked it, but like maybe it wasn't for me. I think after issue 2, I think I'm going to stick around with this one for a little bit longer.
All right.
And then into my indie books corner this week, I had up first from Image and Skybound, I had Assassination Nation from Kyle Starks and Erica Henderson. And Erica Henderson was the artist on Squirrel Girl, right?
Yeah.
I think Kyle Starks wrote some Rick and Morty comics.
Yep. And Mars Attacks for Dynamite.
Oh, okay. Well, this was a fun book. I thought it was a fun first issue. The plot of this book is the top 20 assassins in the world are gathered by the former top assassin as he's now a businessman, and there's 3 attempts on his life, and his security team is trash. So he hires the top 20 assassins in the world to protect him, and he's going to pay them to protect him. And so he basically invites them all for this huge conference meeting, and then one of them has a contract to kill him, and he's like, "I'll pay you double if you save me." So like then all of them start shooting each other, and there's a lot of like goofy characters here. Like just for example, since the opening page is like lists all the top 20 and and like their names, there's a character named Fuck Tarkington
Nice.
and David Bowie knife.
That's clever.
Um, so there's like they all have like these different personalities that are all kind of clashing, which is kind of fun. But and then at the end, of course, a big shootout, and like half of them get killed. So like we're down to like only like I think we might only be down to yeah, I think half of them get like I think we're down to like 8 by the end of the first issue. And those are the ones seemingly going to protect the former top of 10, which his name is Chekhov's gun because he's so good that if he shows up, death has to follow. This was fun, but ultimately, I don't think I'm gonna stick with it. But I did like the art a lot. This kind of read like something I could see on like Adult Swim or something.
Yeah.
And then it boom. There was Buffy the Vampire Slayer #3. I caught up on this book because I am a Buffy fan. That's a reimagining reboot of the classic show, and I kind of like what they're doing with it. Dan Mora's on art. It's the same artist from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers books, and he's really good. He gets the likenesses down from the people, like from the actors in the show, but it's not like photo realistic like it is from the Marvel Star Wars books. Like it's still comic art, but like they look enough that I'm like not like double takes all the time. Um, but the beginning of this issue, Spike and Drusilla are being kind of set up as the villains of this first arc. Angel has still not showed up yet, so that's interesting. But a giant bat is unleashed on Sunnydale, and Buffy has to stop it. And it turns out that the giant bat is kind of like the Pegasus to Slayers, which was interesting. But eventually, he gets trapped back in his little jar at the end of this. But it's just kind of it's the first encounter we see between Buffy, Spike, and Drusilla, and then Buffy and Cordelia, and Xander and Willow show up also to help stop the giant bat creature. So I thought that was interesting.
Those
Um,
all sound like made up names.
those all sounded like made-up names.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I like what they're doing with this. There's enough different in it that, like, if you're a fan of the show, it's not exactly beat for beat what's different. But I do like this a lot. Like, just for example, in the '90s, think like Mean Girls. Cordelia is like the very popular, bitchy, popular girl who's kind of the bully to the rest of them. But now she's like more of a very nice and preppy person who kind of is like more like she's no one likes her because she's like too nice, if that makes sense. Um, Other interesting things they have Willow being out already. It's not a thing where I don't think she came out as gay in the show until like season 4. So she has a girlfriend already in this, and they're setting up stuff with Xander, who kind of feels like he's out of place. Slash, he has nothing to offer. Like there's like these text bubbles, or from like a blog that in the first two issues. In the first issue, you thought was Buffy writing it, but no, it's Xander. So, Jordi Belair clearly has something planned for Xander, as Spike and Drusilla are planning to go after Willow and Xander because Drew has Buffy's phone. She stole it in the fight. So we'll see what happens with that. Really enjoying this. This is pretty fun.
What do you think about Belair's writing?
I think it's good. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I don't think there's. I think the dialogue's solid. The characters all sound like the characters from the show, just more updated for 2019 opposed to like 1996. So you have that, and then I like all the subtle changes to the characters. It's familiar but different at the same time. Um, this was a pleasant surprise how much I actually am enjoying this book. I think Jordy Belair and Dan Moore are solid on this book.
Yeah, so Belair obviously mostly known, or to date known, as being one of the best colorists of the modern era, without a doubt. Multiple, um, or actually, maybe she's only won one Eisner, but constant awards contender and very acclaimed. And she's been getting into writing. She did a story in Batman Secret Files recently, as part of the King run, and then she did an image book. I don't. It might be over, but it was called Redlands. I'm not sure if it's still running. I think it might be. And now she's on Buffy. So Boom really put in trust in Jordie Bellaire to be a strong writer. And I mean, I know this book is doing very well for Boom.
It seemed the way they worded it in like the introduction pages to this book is it seemed like it was kind of curated and it's being looked over by Joss Whedon. So, but like he's not directly involved in it.
Yeah, not as I don't think he's involved nearly as much as the Dark Horse era.
Well, the Dark Horse era, he was writing it.
Yeah,
and his brother were writing
initially, and then like co-writing, and eventually.
Yeah, but they were bringing on like different, like I know Christos Gage came in, but also they had writers from the show also coming on. But no, I really like this. Also, the other thing I like is like Cordelia and I can't remember the other person and her friend. I think Harmony. They're like out and like they're not like miffed by a giant bat just like flying by. Like they're not dealing with the kind of trying to pretend and cover up that Sunnydale is not this weird place. They're kind of like leaning into like, yeah, it's Sunnydale. It's on a hellmouth of demons, so weird shit's gonna happen. So everyone's kind of accustomed to that stuff happening, which I like. Because in the show there was a lot of that, like everyone doesn't realize how in imminent danger they are. They're just kind of like, yeah, it's weird stuff happens here. And then at IDW, a bold new era for Transformers, Vince, as they're relaunching it after ending it not so long ago. Brian Buckley's the writer on here, and then Angel Hernandez and Katchett Whitman are artists. So Transformers is going all the way back to Cybertron. So before kind of the war starts, and really, Autobots, Rubble, and Bumblebee and Windblade are just kind of investigating stuff out in the open as Orion Pax, who before he's known as Optimus Prime, is sitting down having a chat with Megatron. And the other Autobots find a dead body in a cave, and there's a mystery of who done it. That's really all that happened in this book. I did not really enjoy it. I thought for a first issue it was horribly slow and did not really have a lot of action that you'd expect in a Transformers book. I wish I had more to say. I don't really have a lot to say on this book.
Yeah, I'm not a Transformers fan really at all. Never got into the show or toys or anything like that. Eventually, I'll probably read bits and pieces of the previous, no longer active IDW continuity. But there's just so much fucking much of it that I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that.
And like half of it's out of print.
Yeah, but pretty interesting that they're doing a reboot, and we'll see if it lasts. Like over a decade, like the last one. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we'll see. On it, like there was just nothing here to really bind me to come back. Like hardly any action. It's maybe I think maybe doing Battlestar Galactica like politics. I feel like that's kind of what they're going for in this first issue. Maybe not the smartest thing for Transformers.
So this writer Brian Ruckley, I looked him up. He did a Rogue Trooper miniseries for IDW. Because I guess IDW, I don't know if they still do, but IDW has at times had some of the 2000 AD stuff. Like they did that Dwayne Swazierski Judge Dredd run.
Yeah.
And he also did a Highlander miniseries for IDW. And both of those had decent artists on it. Alberto Ponticelli on Rogue Trooper and Andrea Moody on Highlander. Now, these artists, I don't really recognize their names. Angel Hernandez.
Yeah.
Yeah, I highly doubt I will ever read this series.
So over to Marvel as we close things out.
Yep.
Tell me what happened this week in Amazing Spider-Man number 17, though we both read it.
Yes. This is officially part 1 of Hunted. And the concept here, again, well, we start out with a Kraven interlude, calling back to Kraven's Last Hunt, talking about his epic suicide, and then his return. And as we know from previous stories discussed on our Spider-Man podcast, only a spider can kill Kraven or something like that.
Yeah.
And so Hunted, I guess, ultimately is another death by Spider-Man attempt by Kraven. That'll be the ultimate goal for him. And we get actually once we get like even the Kraven interlude, I would say the first quarter of this book actually is like recap and flashback stuff, but I didn't find it too annoying.
No, it was fine.
But like,
also, this is Humberto Ramos on art, who I don't like, but he was pretty good here.
Yeah. They also did some interesting. This is probably mostly on the colorist, but they did some interesting things with some of the flashback scenes where panels would be like differently colored. I'm not sure how to properly describe the effect. Black Cat and Billy, the lizard's son, they're the bait, and Pete falls right into a trap set by Kraven Jr., the clone kid, whatever his name is, and it causes him to hallucinate. And he imagines, or maybe it's prophetic, that MJ might get fridged. And my question, my dumb connected reference, is who did it better, Tom King or Nick Spencer?
For what?
I'm comparing it to the Walmart issue where Superman is imagining Lois getting killed.
Oh, well, this didn't have people on Bleeding Cool talking about how it's horrible, and so Tom King did it better.
Obviously, sincerely hope that MJ scene does not come to fruition. That would very much upset me.
Watch, Spider-Man will stop it right before it happens.
Yeah, obviously. And Spidey wakes up. He's in Central Park. They put up the shields, and someone changed him into his black suit, which is the funny part. Because obviously he was wearing that suit when Kraven's Last Hunt happened.
Yeah.
And I think didn't they change his suit during Grim Hunts as well?
Yeah.
It's just like this dumb fetish thing. And the hunt begins. And at first, like literally every villain is there. And so they all start converging on Spider-Man. And they're like, hey, you got to be up to some shit. But then robots come out of nowhere. And obviously Arcade's been involved, but I don't remember any direct references to this robots part of the plan before. I think obviously it's supposed to be a surprise, but I was totally expecting, all the rich hunters.
I think the witch hunters are like controlling these things like via VR or something.
That's a good guess. I think that might be the case. And so, basically everyone's going to start running as they do, but it'll be interesting to see actually, because they're not going to resolve this part of the plot in just the next issue. So it'll be interesting to see.
No, this is going to go all the way through May, pretty much.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Spidey interacts with all of these villains going forward.
I'm assuming we're going to see a team up with the Rhino because he tried to do that in the last arc, but I'm assuming Rhino's also going to want some revenge since we did see him as he's getting pulled away. Rhino's like, "I'm going to get you, Spider-Man."
Yeah, and Black Cat is not in the ring.
No, they're trapped in like the resort area.
Yeah, she's the bait, and I was expecting that Spidey was going to team up with Black Cat during this.
Right.
Get all Hunger Games, and so when they're stranded trying to hide from all the villains, you get a little hot and heavy romantic moment, cause some tension since he's back with MJ. But we'll see. Overall, honestly, this issue felt pretty light in my opinion. Like as I said, a lot of it was recap, flashbacks.
Yeah, but still good.
Yeah, but it was totally fine to me.
I enjoyed I will say I enjoyed the Hunted issue last week more than this though.
Yeah. But I'm hyped for part 2.
Yep.
All right. What's going on in Avengers?
No Road Home?
Yeah, the Avengers book that we actually want to read.
Yeah, the Avengers book we're reading. A giant fight is still happening. But the man has finally arrived at the end of this. We'll get there though. This issue opens up with a slight recap of the last time, but Wanda is teaming up with Spectrum since their powers are working in tandem. So Wanda's actually able to do something now. But back in Nightmare's realm, the Hulk is able to beat up. I can't remember the kids' names.
This one's Hypnos.
Hypnos. He just straight up breaks his neck.
It's pretty bad,
which was pretty sweet. And then the combined forces of Spectrum, Hercules, Vision, and Scarlet Witch it all goes kablooey, and Voyager's back, and then Wanda's thrown into another dimension where she's rescued by Conan.
Yep.
So he's here. Literal sword and sorcery.
Yeah. Like before, almost all the previous issues, not much happened here.
No, not a lot.
But everything that happened was pretty cool.
Yeah, everything on the page is pretty fun.
A asleep entity version of Kate Bishop shows up and fights Hawkeye.
That was fun. But they're trying to say that Kate Bishop's still better than Clint, though.
Well, that's just Rocket Raccoon saying that, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And he's supposed to be funny, so it didn't bother me too much.
Okay, well, I read that wrong. I read that as
yeah,
Clint thinking that, but yeah.
And then Monica and Wanda, they're like team up, basically super mover, however you want to call it. It's pretty damn cool.
That was really cool.
Monica is basically using her powers to enter her brain. And we get a footnote to an issue of Al Ewing's Mighty Avengers there. Really cool to see. And then Wanda's in Samaria. Pretty awesome. It ends with an editorial from Jim Zub where he's very hype about Conan. So the driving force on the creative team with the Conan stuff is Jim Zub.
Well, this is to be Conan continued.
Yes.
That's the end of the book.
He wrote a Conan Red Sonja crossover, but it was published by Dark Horse a few years back. He co-wrote it with Gail Simone and art by Dan Panosian. And so he's hyped to write Conan. I'm not sure if I've expressed this on this show, but I'm just generally worried with Conan being in the Marvel Universe because in 20 years from now, when I'm probably dead anyways, if they lose the license, I don't know. Marvel can't collect.
You think you're gonna be dead in 20 years?
No, I'm just joking. But it's good.
Here's my thing. I honestly think with characters like Ares and Hercules and Thor, I think Conan can work. It's just one of those things of he can stay in his little world too.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I've
don't
kind
want Conan like on the main flagship Avengers book, but
yeah, I mean, the continuity is going to be weird, obviously, because like his books, they're not really going to ever interlace those. I don't think so. He'll just appear in main Marvel Universe books. I've kind of, I'm kind of at the point where I'm okay with him being in the Marvel Universe. I'm just concerned about the like editorial long term perspective.
yeah. The other thing with Conan also is I feel like Conan works better than Angela.
Uh, yeah, I mean, you don't. It's because they felt the need to force Angela in.
Well, they forced Angela in because Neil Gaiman got the rights back and he just sold her to Marvel to spite Todd, but
Yeah, but I mean, they intimately connected her with Thor and that entire mythos. Whereas Conan, it's just like Conan is everything Conan, and here's the multiverse.
yeah. Which yeah, and I mean with Angela they had to bend everything because she's intrinsically tied to Spawn and you can't use anything from Spawn for in the Marvel universe, so
Yep. Um, Speaking of Conan, I read a Conan book. It's not really a Conan book. This is Age of Conan Belit, number
yeah.
one.
What is this?
So I'm pretty sure it's Belit. It might be Belit. I don't know how to pronounce this. And so Belit is a character from Conan. She's a pirate queen um, from the original Howard novels. Let me see if I can quickly figure out which issues of the original Marvel comic was her arc. Um, but she's a pirate queen. Uh, Runs into Conan and okay, so the story was adapted and expanded in Conan the Barbarian 57, 58, and 100. And in the Dark Horse run, the Queen of the Black Coast, the Queen of the Black Coast arc wasn't picked up until later. That was the first arc by Brian Wood and Becky Cloonan, which at Dark Horse, a lot of Conan fans hated that run because they redesigned Conan, made him a little more thin, less like muscular, and a little more verbose in his speech and everything like that. But it's a Conan character. It's one of the major arcs of the character. But this is kind of like a solo book on the character. And it's got this really cool Sanded Cicada cover, which makes it seem like it's going to be this serious, darker tone. And she's got like a real sexy design, reminiscent of like Deja Thoris and those kinds of pulpy stuff. But when you actually get into the book, it's not like that at all. This is written by Teenie Howard, drawn by Kate Nimzik. Definitely pronouncing that wrong. She was the artist on Mockingbird with Chelsea Kane, and then with Chelsea Kane launched Man Eaters at Image. But it was just announced like this week that she's no longer going to be drawing Man Eaters, and so I think this miniseries is the reason why.
Okay.
And so I got a little bit of whiplash because the cover and it's a Conan book. I'm like, all right, this is going to be some crazy badass, sort of sexy pirate queen stuff. But Kate Nemsik's art is a little more cartoony. And inside, this book is basically like an all ages pirate book. It's almost like a Disney princess kind of setup. So Belit's father is a legendary pirate admiral who hung up his hat to raise his daughter and settle on land. But she's a little imaginative. She has aspirations of being a legendary pirate like him. Also, she's obsessed with killing sea monsters, which she's never seen, but she believes that they exist. And that's just the status quo. And then, just totally randomly, a bunch of thugs come out and grab her dad because he has debts. And they strand him on a sandbar in the middle of the sea. She tries to go rescue him, and she totally can, but like due to pirate honor code or something, he's just going to sit there and wait until he dies or something. And so she sits there with him and is like, "Tell me everything you know about being a pirate." And then she pulls out a knife and murders her dad. It's like a mercy kill, but it's
Okay.
off panel, but that was pretty surprising. And she gets back on the land and she tries to fight, and then just gets effortlessly enslaved by other pirates. And I thought that bit was interesting. Like, she doesn't put up a fight remotely. And then we get these new characters, and it's a ship, and they come across the other ship, which Balit is on, and the Balit's ship is like, "Hey, you want to check out these slaves before we take them to auction? We'll give you a deal." And the other ship's like, "Aya," because they're like slave freeing vigilante pirates. And I think it's a little on the nose. So the two main characters of the ship, you have this like super huge, buff black woman, and then this white dude with like a choker necklace. It's a little weird to me. Not any
Right.
problem, but it stood out. And they rescued Balit, who was like chained up in a chest. And basically, her characterization is that she's just a brat, and she proclaims herself queen since her dad died. She's no longer the princess, the pirate princess. She's the queen, and her title eventually in the Conan timeline will be the Queen of the Black Coast. And the final page tease is that a giant squid shows up. So the sea monsters that she's obsessed with do exist, and she's going to get to fight them. And
Interesting.
I liked this actually. I was really disappointed the first few pages as I started reading because I was not expecting this tone and this art style, and then I was pleasantly surprised. Like she's a complete brat, but it's like a compelling way, and she's a like a little pirate girl. It's kind of cool. And then there's a prose backup by Michael A. Stackpole, who was the writer of the first 4 X-Wing novels and various other things, including the adaptation of the Jason Momoa Conan movie. But I didn't read it because I don't read prose in my comic books.
It'd be very hard if we ever do a long form review on Grant Morrison's Batman, because
Yeah, that Joker issue.
that Joker issue that everyone trashes because it's prose, but it's really, really good, and one of, if not one of the top 5 Joker stories of all time.
I mean, the art's pretty weird too.
The art's like digital. It's weird. It looks like Gmod, but it works.
All right, I think we have our last book. Mike, you want to talk about Ms. Marvel?
I can talk about it, but this is literally the first Ms. Marvel book I've read, so I thought you were going to take it.
All right, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, you did plenty of indie stuff in a row.
Yeah.
So this is the relaunch of Ms. Marvel, the first issue proper of Ms. Marvel, not written by G. Willow Wilson, the creator of the character. And she gets an adjective, and it's magnificent. And I don't know how I feel about that. Obviously, it's the first issue. I don't think any other Marvel series has used this adjective, or any comic in general. So maybe it'll grow on me, but I'm not sure if it really sings the right way. I was in my head, I was thinking marvelous Miss Marvel, but that actually sounds really stupid. So, creative team here, we have Saladin Ahmed on writing. He also Black Bolt, the Quicksilver tie-in to No Surrender, and is also writing Miles Morales. So he's writing Ms. Marvel and Miles Morales, which is pretty interesting.
I mean, giving him the reins though, like those are 2 of their bigger characters.
Yeah, the 2 biggest, like, I mean, at this point, are they? They're probably like 2 biggest teenage heroes at Marvel,
Definitely.
and also, obviously, are kind of the poster children for also the kind of more focus on diversity with subsequent generations of heroes. And so, yeah, he's got some pretty great gigs there. Art is by Minkyu Young, definitely pronouncing wrong. And It opens with a weird fairy tale framing device, which never gets explained in this issue. I didn't really like that part. Obviously, I assume it will get explained later. It's going to connect back around, but it doesn't here, and it just annoyed me. Wasted pages. And so Kamala Khan, we get a quick no-name villain fight to establish, hey, she's a superhero. Then meet some supporting cast, her friend, I forget her name, and also as these pages go on, it lets Ahmed kind of build up the tone that he's going for, where it's lighthearted, it's a teenage superhero book, but there's just a little bit of like commentary and political discussion, which was really I mean, that was that's the tradition so far for Ms. Marvel. That was common in G. Willow Wilson's run as well. But there's like comments about hipsters and kind of little light allusions to um, gentrification and stuff like that. And there's a funny note where the one character talks about brown people time, and then superhero time just exacerbates that. So Kamala's always late, like other superheroes, like Barry Allen. And she gets home, and we get the first major status quo change from Ahmed. Her dad knows that she's a superhero. And up to this point, through 50 issues or so, that was not the case. And then her dad prominently tries to ground her. And it's implied maybe something's going on with him, like maybe he has cancer or something. That's my assumption.
It definitely something like they're building towards. They have sort of news they want to tell her.
Yeah. And then, but she gets distracted because some interdimensional dudes attack her love interest, or he's kind of like her love interest. I don't really remember. Like, I mean, I'm like,
it seemed like it's one of her friends.
yeah, but at least at one point there was a little bit of like a crush kind of thing. I'm like,
okay.
I'm like
I said, you've read more Kamala stuff than I have.
I'm like 20 issues behind in the Wilson run, but if I recall that, but they may have resolved that. And he's also kind of like her, kind of like a Q figure kind of thing, or even like an Alfred figure in a way. And these interdimensional beings, they turn to goop when she fights them. And end of the issue, she runs home because one of them is detected at her house, and then her parents turn to goop. So overall, pretty good final page tease. Gets you wanting to read the next issue, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the art here.
Art was fantastic.
It's cartoony and conveys Kamala's powers well, which is very important because she has very animated and versatile powers.
Slightly reminds me of Francisco Francavilla a little bit.
Yeah, the coloring has a real nice texture to it. If anything, and this is on the art side, the story kind of implies that Kamala's really shitty with collateral damage, because the issue opens with like a shopkeeper complaining about his entire store getting destroyed by a fight, and then later she throws one of these monsters into a wall and like almost completely crumbles it.
Yeah, but she protects New Jersey. It's already enough of a shithole.
Yeah, she's in Jersey City, which is cool. Always nice to see a character not in the Marvel universe,
Yeah,
not
not
in
New York.
I think it'll take a little while for Ahmed to kind of make this book his own, because he's following such a long run by the character.
A long run with one of the co-creators. And how long did Willow write the book? It was over 50 issues, right?
Yeah, something like that. It's confusing because Secret Wars is in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I think it may have been actually 50 on the dot. I'm not sure because they did an oversized like celebration issue or something. But I would say this is all right so far.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I'll probably read the next issue, or I'll see what other people say. Kind of watch in the background for a little bit, but I'll probably keep reading this. I actually really like Kamala. I think she's, in my opinion, she's the most interesting slash best new Marvel like solo character probably in like 20 years.
Yeah, I could probably agree to that. Yeah, I can't think of anyone else. I mean, there's Miles, but he had to come over from the Ultimate Universe, though.
Yeah, and I like Kamala more than Miles personally. And also, even though obviously she's called Ms. Marvel, she's inspired by Carol Danvers and everything, I
Right,
kind of view Kamala as less of a legacy hero than some of the other legacy heroes. Like
right.
she has way more of her own tropes and supporting cast and like aspects to her character, whereas like Miles as Spider-Man,
A
Sam
lot of
Alexander,
his supporting cast was kind of piggybacked off of Peter.
and it's just the same kind of stories. And same thing with Sam Alexander as Nova, Amadeus Cho as Hulk. Like a lot of these characters, they're just literally following in the footsteps of their predecessor. Whereas Kamala, she's not mirroring anything that Carol Danvers did.
Right, and I mean the power set's completely different.
And she has really cool visual powers as well. Um, so yeah. Are we missing anything? I think that those are all our books for this
That's
week.
it. That's all the stuff I read this week. Unless you read anything else.
Nah. So I would say it's a decent week overall. I enjoyed all the stuff I read. I didn't read those indie books though.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't super keen on Assassination Nation or Transformers, but hey, not every week's a winner. But other than that, everything else I read pretty good to great.
What would,
Um,
what would you classify as your pick of the week?
Pick of the week. I'm gonna go with Buffy. I maybe it's because I read all 3 issues at once, and maybe that's a cheat. But I'm really liking where Jordy Belair is going with that book.
I'm I'm going with Ms. Marvel.
You going with Marvel? All right. I'd say I'd say if I were to rank my top 3, I'd go Buffy, Wonder Twins, maybe a tie between Ms. Marvel, and Spider Man.
Yeah, I think all the books I read I really liked, but none of them really stood out to me.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, it is weird going from last week where I felt like there was at least 5 books that it could have easily been my pick of the week. To this, it was much harder to choose. But uh, I guess for a tease for next week, just to let you know what's coming out, we got Batman 67 from DC. I'll be reading that, and then Marvel we have. Of course, we have more No Road Home for the Avengers, but we got more Uncanny X-Men, which we're enjoying. And then Spider-Man Life Story #1 comes out next week, so very kind of hyped for that.
Yep. Thanks for watching this episode. Tune in next time to the comics show with no name.